What's up, guys?
So today we're going to be covering, you guessed it, the death penalty. So the death penalty, otherwise known as capital punishment, occurs when a government executes a criminal convicted of certain crimes that are deemed to be egregious by the state. In most cases, this does involve aggravated murder, where the crime itself is surrounded by horrific details. This makes the punishment crime-specific and not centered around the track record of the individual, meaning that if you had an insane amount of crimes on your record, let's say 34 felonies, you wouldn't be anywhere near this punishment. Go figure. In the United States, methods of capital punishment have included hanging, electrocution, gas chambers, firing squads, and lethal injections, which is most common today. The death penalty is not widely practiced in the United States, as some states have opted to authorize and carry out executions, while others have banned it entirely. On a federal level, some crimes, such as treason, are still viable to be punished by death, but that varies by executive policy. Capital punishment as a whole is very controversial. The biggest concern is the risk of executing innocent people, which did happen in the case of 14-year-old George Stinney Jr., who was executed in 1944 after being wrongly convicted for the crime of murdering two white girls following his interrogation without his parents or a lawyer present, and being tried by an all-white jury. There is also the case of Joe Aridi, a mentally disabled man who was executed in 1939 for the murder in violation of a young girl, despite being coerced into giving a false confession and another man admitting to the same crime. There is also the concern of it being a violation of human rights, namely dignity and the sanctity of life. Quite possibly the biggest voice against the death penalty is the Catholic Church, with our GOAT, Pope Leo, reaffirming the Church's position on the matter in a recent statement.
Someone who says I'm against abortion but says I'm in favor of the death penalty is not really pro-life. So someone who says that I'm against abortion but I'm in agreement with the inhuman treatment of immigrants who are in the United States, I don't know if that's pro-life.
Moving on, we'll be looking at the three biggest cases that define the interpretation of the Eighth Amendment. First is Furman v. Georgia, circa 1972. For a bit of background, Furman v. Georgia came from three cases which involved defendants who were sentenced to death by juries that had unguided discretion in sentencing people to capital punishment. In Furman's case, he was robbing a private home when a family member discovered him. He attempted to flee and in doing so, tripped and fell. The gun that he was carrying went off and killed a resident of the home. He's convicted of murder and sentenced to death. At the time, state governments allowed juries to sentence people to death all willy-nilly and without clear standards, which many times led to racially biased outcomes, causing a disproportionate amount of non-whites being sentenced to death. Why it matters. This case temporarily shut down capital punishment nationwide and swapped hundreds of death sentences to life imprisonment. It also forced the country to overhaul its policies immediately. The key holding here is that the court ruled the death penalty statutes administered at the time were a violation of the Eighth Amendment due to being decided arbitrarily and in a discriminatory manner. Now on to the next one, which is Gregg v. Georgia, 1976. In response to Furman, many states rewrote their capital punishment laws to be in alignment with the court. Following this, Troy Leon Gregg was convicted of armed robbery and murder, which he was sentenced to death for under Georgia's revised laws. This case matters as it brought back capital punishment, but under strict constitutional limits, with the key holding here being that the death penalty is not unconstitutional if it is applied under proper procedures. This case implemented guided discretion in sentencing and required bifurcated trials, as well as the consideration of multiple factor categories such as aggravating and mitigating factors. Now on to the last case, which is Atkins v. Virginia, circa 2002. For some background, Daryl Rennard Atkins was convicted with abduction, armed robbery, and murder. During his trial, Atkins was revealed to have an intellectual disability, but at the time, many states still executed the mentally disabled. At this time, society increasingly viewed the punishment as inhumane, and the Supreme Court revisited the issue in response to the changing social standards. This case matters as it widely restricted who is fit for execution in order to respect human dignity and morality, with the key holding being that that executing those with intellectual disabilities violates the Eighth Amendment, as executing the mentally disabled counts as cruel and unusual punishment. Atkins v. Virginia removed an entire category of people from being eligible for the death penalty, and shifted interpretation of the Eighth Amendment to moral and psychological implications. Now, how has the Supreme Court balanced personal freedoms and dignities with societal law? Well, the court has consistently stated that capital punishment is treated as a delicate balance between individual constitutional protections, such as dignity of persons, fairness, and punishments that are proportionate to crimes, along with the country's interest in public safety, crime deterrence, and retribution for families of the affected. In this balance between life and death, the Supreme Court has narrowed the scope of the death penalty to address certain crimes. It has implemented safeguards in the trial process and eliminated vulnerable groups of people from ever being considered for punishment. Alright, that's all. Bye-bye.